Hey guys, today I'm here to talk to you about Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. Now, a basic summary of this book is that it goes through, literally, the brief history of humankind. So it starts off with all species of humans, Neanderthals and Sapiens, goes through the cognitive revolution where Sapiens take control of everyone else and basically wipe them off the map. After the cognitive revolution, it goes into hunter-gatherer societies, and then we get into the agricultural revolution. We talk about how the agricultural revolution was all about plants domesticating humans rather than the other way around, because from the perspective of wheat, if you consider them being productive and them being a good species, then they multiplied greatly from the agricultural revolution, and so spread their genetic makeup. But humans, on the other hand, got a less varied diet and ended up having more problems than they thought they were going to have. From the agricultural revolution, we moved to the industrial revolution. With the industrial revolution, we did get a lot of new ways of creating energy and new innovations with the industrial revolution. We moved to now, with all of the implications that capitalism has, with where the current technology and the current research is taking us in terms of where the current research and the current technology is taking us in the future. So, from all that, there are three things that I want to talk about. The first being the importance of the human element. The second being happiness being subjective and individualistic in nature. And the third, how technology and research that we're currently doing affects the future and how we think about the future. And then at the end, I'm just going to do a really quick summary of how these things relate to information science. So the first thing is the importance of the human element. With this, the most important thing I want to point out is that everything that humans do is subjective. And the importance of recognizing this in humans is that because of this, sapiens believe that they take precedence over other animals and over other living things. The other thing is that sapiens actively decide and collectively decide what activities are worth pursuing and what kinds of thought processes and what kind of actions are acceptable in their societies. So, for example, he talks about money in the book. How money in the US, how the coins and the dollars have value because we have assigned them value, because we all believe that these things have value, and then we could use them to interact with other people who believe that these things have value to get the things that we want. What's really important about this is that everything is like this. So every time you interpret something, every time you see something, every time you read something or hear something, whenever you think about it, and then whenever you bring it back out of yourself, you are bringing with it all of your experiences and all of your thoughts and all of your subjectivity with it. Human beings, their minds, the way that they work, they are not logical, they are not rational, and human beings are incredibly emotional and incredibly unpredictable, which is the importance of the human element. You have to understand how people work and what they care about and the things that they'll do for the things that they care about. The second thing I want to talk about is that happiness is subjective and individualistic. Now, this is incredibly important in this day and age where we're in this kind of individual mindset, and that the individual is more important than the collective. And so what you get with this is a lot of studies, you get questions of whether or not people prior to now were happier than we are, or if they were just as happy. Now, there are some problems with this. One of the problems is that material possessions do not equal happiness. Now, this has been proven through scientific studies and scientific research, and they say that when you accumulate a lot of material possessions, eventually you just get used to what you have, and then you are equally as dissatisfied as you were before you had these material things. So what's really important to happiness is being content. Now, with being content, they're especially interested in Buddhism because they say that to escape suffering, you need to stop expecting things from your life, to take things as they are and be okay with it. Not to expect or want to be happy all the time, to just accept that you're not going to be happy all the time, that you're going to get sad, and then just deal with it as it comes along, and that is how to live a good, happy, fulfilling life. The third thing I want to talk about is how current technology and research is affecting our views of the future and what could be coming in the future. Now, right now, they say they're innovating, they're creating this new technology, they're going through this new research to try and save human lives now. We're trying to cure cancer, we're trying to eradicate diseases, or helping people who have these very debilitating diseases that they're born with. But in the future, and really now, we've come up with ways that you can increase people's memories, increase their physical strength, and we're able to make hybrids of animals or hybrids of plants that didn't exist before. These things make us like God. He described it as people taking on the creator role of God. And then he wanted to point out that the issue with this is that when you are creating new things, when you are tampering with humans, and you don't really understand what it means to be human, or you don't know how this is going to affect people in the long term, this could lead to a whole nother race of humans, or really, could you even call them humans? Or a new era of robots. What are you going to call them? What are their rights going to be? What are the ethics involved in this? So there are a lot of unknowns associated with these things that we're trying to mitigate, that we're trying to think of before it gets that far. Now, the other thing is that especially is concerning is that when you start creating humans, when you start messing with the genome, when you start messing with personality traits, you have to decide, what do you want to want? Because in the future, they could eradicate genes that make you want, say, fatty foods that we developed because we were hunter-gatherers and evolution has not been able to keep up with our fatty diets now, which is why a lot of people can become overweight because they're just predisposed to like those fatty foods. Humans are predisposed to like sugary things in order to keep the weight on from when we were hunter-gatherers. But now, because evolution hasn't kept up, because we have advanced so far in such a short amount of time, we aren't sure what we want anymore. Do we want to be content? If so, how does that happen? What kinds of changes are you going to make? And what are the kinds of beings that you're going to create from doing these things? How does this relate to information science? Information science is going to be a pioneer in not only the way that we store information, the way that information is organized, but also is going to be a pioneer in deciding the ethics of this kind of thing. Who has access to that information? How safe can we make the information? Things like that. So in information science, when you're considering organization, you really have to not forget the human element here. You really have to remember that the way human brains work, they connect ideas and information, they connect things in a very kind of nebulous, globular way. It's not logical, it's not linear. And when you consider that, and you consider human emotions and the way we interact with things and other people, it might make it easier not only to organize and retrieve that information in terms of normal everyday people using their normal everyday vocabulary, but also with things like libraries and places where it's incredibly important to be highly organized, but you have to make it organized in a way that the people using it will understand and understand easily. The second thing is subjectivity and individualism. Now this ties in with my second and my third point because of this. When you are making these changes, when you are developing this technology and trying to come up with what is ethical, what isn't, you have to consider, number one, that a lot of people have a lot of opinions on the issue based on their experiences, their past, and their culture, what they're used to, what they grew up with, which is the subjectivity part of it. It has to be considered when you're making these decisions about what's good and what's bad. You have to come up with a general human consensus around the globe, which currently we are not ready for. Armed with all of this knowledge and, the research that's telling you what people need, what humans need, is going to be incredibly important to information science, especially because there is a human element that must be addressed because information is created by humans for humans to consume. And you have to be able to change your methods and change your ways based on who you're dealing with, at least until we get to the point where we have a truly global culture where everyone has a very similar background, a very similar body of information, and a very similar level of education. Until then, you're going to have to deal with individualism in radically different social contexts, and that's incredibly important for information science in an increasingly global world.